Okay, everybody, welcome to part 2 of the liquid tutorial. We are going to move on to technique number 2. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go to composition, new composition. I'm going to call this sticky because we're going to be dealing with shapes that are going to stick together. And again, you could do the 1080 by 1080 if you want. I'm going to do the 1920 so that there's more room on the screen. All right, so for this one, my background color is white, and I'm going to leave that as is for now because we are going to do what's called a pre-comp in this particular composition, which I'll get into later. So don't worry about the background color right now. That is going to change. Whoops. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create some shapes on this composition. So I'm going to do a new shape layer, and I'm just going to create some spheres of a few different colors. So you can pick whatever colors you like. I think I'm going to go with more of like purples and blues. So I'm going to go ahead and if I hold my shift key down when I pull the ellipse shape out, it will go ahead and make it proportional, just so you know. So I'm going to pull that out, and I like what's going on there. Instead of creating a new shape layer and going through that all again, I'm actually just going to highlight the layer down here. I'm going to hit Command D for duplicate. And then if I grab my selection tool, you're going to see that there is another sphere, circular shape, ellipse. One thing that I'm noticing is that the anchor point for this layer is in the center of the composition, which is typically what happens. And we do need to move that anchor point just because it's irritating to do any kind of animation without the anchor point being in the proper place. So I'm going to come up here and grab the anchor point tool, which is this it's like a square with 4 little arrows in it. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to take this anchor point and we're going to drag it to the center. And if I had done that on the first layer before I duplicated it, it would have duplicated the next layer with the anchor point in the center. So I need to go to my shape layer 1 and I need to do the same thing. I'm going to take the anchor, I'm going to just drag it to the center-ish of this particular ellipse, and now we're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this again, and if I grab my selection tool and pull again, you're going to see the anchor point is where it is supposed to be. So it's much easier to have that anchor point centered from the get-go, but sometimes you don't do everything the way you would want. Now, if I change the scale of this and I hold shift down, you're going to see that it stays proportionate. So you can go ahead and do that. It looks like I let go of the shift key at the last moment on that one, so it made it a little different. You don't have to have perfect shapes in this, though. That's not necessarily what we're doing in this tutorial, but what is kind of important is that you have different sizes and, just kind of have them spaced around a little bit like so. Now we are going to have a center text. And so I do want you to go ahead and create a text layer. You can use whatever phrase you want. I'm using sticky because that is the visual theme of what we are doing here. And I want to use a different font that's going to make more sense for this. So I'm just going to kind of look through here and find something kind of bubbly. And definitely thick and heavy. There was something I used to use called Fat Frank. Is that what it was? And let's see if I have different and just heavy. Okay, I think this will work. Just make that a little larger. So in this particular technique, something that it does is it kind of shrinks the size of whatever shape you have, which is going to be fine for this. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and use this text, and I'm going to make it a little bigger, just so that I tend to make things pretty exaggerated when I'm working on tutorials, so that it's nice and big for you all. And then I need to click onto my selection tool because I want to give a little bit more space. Oh no, that's not working out for me. Let's see, what do I need to do? Grab my text tool. Oh, that's what I need to do. I just need to pull it on the side. Okay. All right, so here's sticky. Good to go. I'm going to move these purple spheres a little bit off. I need to grab my selection tool. It's always toggling back between different tools. Okay, so there's sticky, and then I'm going to create some other spheres over here, but with different colors. So I'm going to take shape color 3, and I'm going to duplicate that, but I'm going to change the fill to more of a pink. So we've got pink, purple, and blue. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with pink, purple, and blue. And then duplicate. So maybe make a much larger one over here. And this one is not scaling for me for some reason. Let's see if I come down into the shape layer and hit my S key. When you are clicked on a shape layer, you can hit like S for scale, P for position. It's pretty handy. Something wacky is going on with this shape layer. Let's see if the other one is acting strange. Looks like the anchor points got off. So if you're ever dealing with a shape layer and you don't really, it's acting strange, like I should be able to scale that, it's probably because the anchor point got off center at some point for some particular reason. So what I need to do then is just go in and kind of correct this anchor point. So for this layer, the anchor point is over here. And I'm not sure exactly what got these off track. But I'll click down here, and I'm not really seeing. I'm not really seeing where that anchor point is. Oh, it's all the way up here. Well, that's strange. So what I'm doing is I'm just zooming in and out. You can hit Command minus or plus to zoom out, or you can roll your mouse or trackpad in and out to be able to zoom out, but a lot of times you have to zoom out to see what's going on off screen. And this anchor point is way up here. So I want to go ahead and pull that down, and I'm going to check my other one as well. And it looks like the anchor point is way over on this purple one. So I'm not sure what happened with that, but we definitely want the anchor points to be in the right spot so that we can properly make adjustments. So now if I go back in, it's working properly. So if you're ever trying to resize something and it's not quite doing what you want it to do, or it's acting funny, likely the anchor point is off. So I'm going to just do a few more. Adjustments here. I think I'll just move this down like so, and then we'll just have one kind of hanging up there. Okay, so the other thing that I need to do is I need to turn this text into shape layers, like I have with everything else. Although I'm just realizing they need to be separated into their own. They need to all be separated into their own layer. So I actually need to approach this text differently than I have. So we are going to just take a moment and we are going to do this. So what we need to do is actually create a separate text layer for each letter. Because when we go in to create an outline of each letter, it actually needs to be on its own layer instead of all in one layer. So for example, when we did the bubbles and I turned the text into I created shapes from the outlines. See how it has bubbles as different elements, but all on one layer? We actually need these to be on separate layers. So we're going to have to approach this a little bit differently. And I don't think create masks and shapes from text. There's really no option here to create a different layer from each letter. So we do need to back up a bit, and we'll have to do each letter individually. So I am just going to lock this for a second, this text layer, so I'm not clicking on it. And let's go ahead and, so this is a little bit tedious, but it'll be worth it, I promise. So we're going to create a text layer, and we're just going to do the letter S. And then what you can do is click on that S layer, and you're going to hit Command D. By the way, duplicating layers is like one of the things you're going to find yourself doing all the time. So what we're going to do is just duplicate it until we get enough layers for each letter in the word sticky. So I'm just going to hit Command D until I get all the way across. Don't worry about the titles of these layers. Those will change as we change the letters. So we need 6 total. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through and I'm going to grab my text tool and I'm going to change these individually one at a time. And you see your letter changes the name of the layer here, so you don't need to worry about that, renaming those or anything. Okay, so now these are all their own text layer, and that is what we need in order to create the effect that we want to create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my original sticky. I'm going to unlock it, and I'm just going to go ahead and select it and delete it because we don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to grab my selection tool, and I'm going to come through here and kind of place these letters a little better so that they're looking good. They don't have to be perfect, and you're going to understand with this technique. It's sort of I showed you a little preview of it. It's where things kind of stick together. So things being perfect is not the nature of this particular technique. Okay, so let's go ahead and highlight all these letters. And then we're going to go to Layer, Create. And, oh, it's not going to let me do it on multiple layers. Let's see if it will let me do it on one layer. Yes, so I guess I can't select them all. So we'll have to go through and create shapes from text individually on all of these. For whatever reason, it doesn't let us do all of them at the same time. That would be too easy, right? So just go ahead and go through. There might be some trick to this that I don't know about. It's quite possible. There's lots of tricks that I don't know about, so you can work with this software for many, many years and still there's so much you don't know. Okay, so now that we have all these outlines, I'm going to go through and delete all the original text layers just because I don't want them in here. So you can do that too if you want less, complication in your project window and layers timeline, but Okay, cool. So all these are ready to go. These are all shape layers now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply the effects that we need to apply in order to make this truly look sticky and have a really nice visual, visual effect. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to create an adjustment layer for this, because this adjustment layer is going to affect all the layers underneath of it. And so we're going to go to adjustment layer, and the effect that we're going to apply is under blur and sharpen, and you're going to just choose Gaussian blur. And I want you to set the blurriness to like 28. So you're just in the blurriness panel right here, you're going to 28. So we've got a nice blur going on. And we're going to add a second effect to this adjustment layer, and that is under effect. We're going to go to matte, and you're going to choose the simple choker. And once you get that on there, you're going to see that the choke mat has a 0 in there. I just want you to click on that and pop in the number 50. And you are going to see the effect already starting to take place. So the reason that we picked such a thick, heavy font is because the choke that we put on here, you can see on the outlines of the composition that the choke causes our shapes to reduce in size by a number of pixels. I'm going to guess this is about 10 pixels. So this isn't really going to be good. We're going to do a pre-composition for our final composition in this particular technique, but the choke causes the shapes to reduce in size. So you want a big, heavy font, because when it reduces in size, you still want it to be really, easily read by your viewer. So what we are going to do is I want my animation to end looking like this, but I want it to begin looking like something else. And so I like to animate this way a lot because I like to put everything how it should look at the end and then animate back from that, because this is going to start out as one messy blob and it's going to reveal itself to our viewer over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the end of the timeline. I am going to select all of these shape layers, and I'm going to hit the P key for position. And you're going to see that position is going to show up for all of these. Well, I have all these selected. So if I toggle on the time clock on my top layer, now again, you're not having the adjustment layer selected. In fact, you can just lock the adjustment layer. But I have a keyframe now for position for the beginning of my animation, and then I can kind of just play around and move backward. Now, I want my viewer to see this for a few seconds before the end of the animation. So I want it to be kind of frozen at the end for a few frames. So I'm going to move my scrubbing tool back on the timeline a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and drop another keyframe. And you can see, because I have all of these layers selected, when I select my keyframe here, it's going to drop a keyframe for everybody that's selected. So that's cool. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate this backward, and I'm going to move around the position of all my different layer elements, all my different shapes here. And then I'm going to add a very subtle wiggle to the layers as well, so that there's an added sort of movement to them to just give them a little bit more effect on the sticky, icky gooiness. All right, so now I'm ready to start moving stuff around. I'm going to move my scrubbing tool back a little bit more, and I'm going to just sort of randomly move these around. So what I want to do is I'm going to just toggle this up. We don't need position to be showing to us anymore because we know that the animation command has been toggled on. And let's just grab one of these, and let me just show you what we're even doing. So if we move one of these towards another object on the canvas, you can see how it has this really cool gooey effect And it's just awesome visually. It's just like a really fun thing. But you see how I'm moving it, and the animation is creating an animation path because we have the time clock toggled on for position. So wherever I move any of these, it's going to record that animation for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to just start randomly. I'm just going to start like playing around and randomly moving things around so that they're moving over time. And again, I'm working backwards in the animation, which is a thing that you can do. I suggest doing it at, it's a way that I work, and I think it's really effective depending on what it is that's going on. So now that I've moved a few around, you can kind of see over time some of the elements have moved, and then I'm going to go in and just do some more. Now, this is something that can be done that's more calculated. For the purpose of our tutorial today, it's going to be really long if I make this really calculated. So I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and move this stuff around and have fun. And so I don't necessarily want to move every shape every single time. I'm going to bring my scrubbing tool forward a little bit, do some more movement. But I'm always kind of keeping the word sticky in line. So it's like sort of readable, but it kind of goes in and out of being legible depending on what's going on. And I'm kind of just like randomly picking stuff because I want it to feel very random. I don't think sticky, icky, gooey stuff is very predictable when it's moving throughout the world and in our lives. Maybe this one I'll have it move through the S. Now I can go in and play around with all these paths. Right now they're very like sort of static because they're not on a rounded path, and that's probably not ideal for this animation overall. One thing you can do to adjust that is, for some reason I have the mask feather tool selected, but under your pen tools, you can choose Convert Vertex tool, and you can come to these anchor points in your animation path and you can toggle that, and that's going to give you a more rounded sort of animation path, which is probably ideal for this. Although if I went through and adjusted all the paths for this tutorial, it's going to be too long. So just know you can go in and always take that vertex tool, and that tool will toggle back and forth between a hard angle and then a more rounded option, which you're used to if you're familiar with drawing paths in Illustrator, or paths in a 3D application or whatever, right? It's all kind of the same language from software to software. And so again, I'm just kind of keeping the sticky intact, but also just having fun with moving it around in different ways. And the way that I want this to end is going to be pretty abstract. So I'm almost to the beginning of my timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit nuts. So as I move it to the beginning of the timeline, I kind of want everything, again, I'm still going to have the word sticky intact, but I'm going to have everything kind of globbed together so that it's really the most unreadable that it should be the most illegible or unreadable in the beginning. I missed I. So I'm going to have sticky kind of together, like it's maybe forming a word of some kind, but not really easy to read. And then these blobs, I think I'll have kind of move together in the center as well. And then we'll just let everything drift apart over time, and then the word will reveal itself at the end. Okay, so now if I go back through, we're going to see this animation move over time, and then it'll reveal itself at the end as the word sticky. You know, this would be great as like a logo animation, or maybe like a, I don't know. There's a bunch of different things you could use for this. So here's what it sort of looks like. But do you see how hard, all these hard angles? Like if I just come in with the tool here and I just turn those all into round, you're going to see this animation path is going to look and feel a lot more organic. And that's ultimately the better option. But, you know, I don't have time to go in and fix all those paths, but I certainly encourage you to do so. So if we highlight all the layers here, and we're going to use a shortcut key, U. If you hit the U key, it's going to show you all the keyframes that were laid out throughout, you know, all the different movements that we did for this particular animation. So we're going to toggle all that up. And what we need to fix now is that we have that sort of this area on the composition where it's kind of creating a frame towards the edge. And that's because of that choke mat that we have on here. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. So I want you to go ahead and select all the layers. If you have your adjustment layer locked, go ahead and unlock it for a minute. We're going to select all these layers. And then I want you to control click and bring up this menu. And what we want to choose here is pre-compose. And what we're doing is we're nestling these all together. It's kind of like grouping them. And we can just name this sticky. So I'm going to hit OK. And so this is going to kind of group everything together, and we can treat this as sort of one object. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a layer new solid, and I'm going to choose maybe like a really light blue for the background. And so now you can see I've got a background, but I still have this issue where it's not moving over to the end of the frame. So all we need to do is we can take sticky now that it's all grouped together. If we hit the S key, it's going to bring the scale option up, and we're going to scale it up as a group until those shapes are hitting the edge of the frame. So we're just blowing it up a little bit, and that fixes that problem of it not getting to the exact edge of the frame. Okay? All right. Well, let's go ahead and save your project if you haven't done so. We're going to go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and we're going to go ahead and render this out. Should be the H.264 settings, sticky, MP4. I'm going to save it to my desktop, which is fine. We go ahead and render it out. And so now we have, video number 2 of our liquid technique tutorial. So, all right, that's the end of part 2. So I'll see you in the next video. Take a break if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll see you in just a minute. Okay, bye.